income and the welfare of the population. Now, for all of this to happen, the plan envisaged that there had to take place an improvement in the delivery of government services. And so it is on the basis of the need to have efficient delivery of government services that the plan recommended reforms, which included indeed reforming the public service sector, so that the delivery of the plan itself would have required that we have a public service that is efficient, competent, and equal to the task. So that, for me, from our perspective, is where we start from. And so, arising from that, the National Planning Authority put in place a public transformation program where we emphasized the same issues as I've already touched on. And under this program, so it was therefore needed that government would need to rationalize commissions, authorities, and other agencies in order to have an efficient, you always hear about this talk about the bloated public expenditure.
Yes.
Now, the idea behind this rationalization is also to address those issues over and above the need to have a lean and efficient public service for which government services would be efficiently delivered. So that is the basis upon which this program was designed, but also the goal of this program, therefore, is to improve the public sector response to the needs of the citizens, and especially the private sector. We can go further and underscore the expected key results from this rationalization. We expect that we would improve and increase government effectiveness in service delivery. We would also be driving on the path of reducing corruption, either perceived or real. And thirdly and lastly, increasing the attractiveness of Uganda as a country to, as an investment destination to the rest of the world. So that is what we expect out of all of this. What will Uganda look like? So that's how this program, which is currently spearheaded by the Ministry of Public Service, is very, very important. I could go on and discuss with you some of the key objectives of this program. And one is to strengthen the accountability and the transparency for results on the part of government. Equally important for the viewers to note, as well as our dear host, is the fact that one of the key objectives, which is the reason why we are here, was to streamline, again, the government structures and institutions for efficient and effective service delivery. That's very, very important. The third one is to strengthen the strategic human resource management on the part of government. That's a key objective of the program. And fourthly, also, to deepen decentralization and citizen participation in local development. And lastly, to increase transparency and eliminating corruption in the delivery of government services.
There's really a lot that you've
Yes, there is a lot, and I guess that, yes, I can stop there for now.
When you talk about the issue of efficiency,
yes,
of course one expects efficiency to be delivered when it comes to government services. And key always on the agenda when it comes to His Excellency, he always never forgets to talk about services on some of the things that he wants to tackle. And also something else to note from your conversation, it is to do with corruption, something that most of the Ugandans always talk about. There's quite a lot. It's going to be a great task ahead of you, I should say, and maybe just getting it from Mrs. Kakama, if you would like to submit more to that, and maybe letting the viewer know how this rationalization will be executed.
Thank you, Sandra. I will pick it from my colleague from NPA, that rationalization as per government is reorganizing government institutions in terms of government structures, government systems and processes to make government institutions be able to adequately respond to service delivery. You know, the focus is on citizens, and government is providing services to citizens. So that is where the focus is, that the government is reorganizing its institutions to make sure that they provide the appropriate services to the Ugandans. Now, when I pick it from the NDP 3, Chapter 20, Objective 2, talks about reorganizing government architecture, and those are government institutions, to be able to effectively deliver efficiently on their mandates and objectives. So how government intends to do it is that this is a reform which came around 2018. That is when a study was made, and then recommendations were made to Cabinet. And then in last year, 2021, around Feb, Cabinet took a decision for government to undertake those recommendations in terms of implementation. So this is what we are calling rationalization of government agencies and public expenditure. Government agencies here, we are looking at public institutions. Those are government institutions. Of course, somewhere we also touch the private sector, but the focus is on public institutions. Now, under Ministry of Public Service, which is responsible for structures of government, there is a cabinet subcommittee which was constituted by cabinet on the 22nd of February to spearhead this reform. And that is chaired by the Minister of Public Service, and that is now the apex that is guiding this reform. And we have an interministerial technical committee chaired by our permanent secretary, and this is at technical level now guiding the technical aspects of rationalization. So the secretariat, which is the operational, reports to that interministerial technical committee, and I happen to be the chairperson of that secretariat on rationalization of government agencies and public expenditure. So basically, out of the 157 institutions, government institutions that were studied, government chose to, or took a decision to rationalize or merge, mainstream, transfer functions of 69 of those 157. So right now what Ministry of Public Service is working on with, of course, colleagues from NPA and other ministries who are supporting us, like Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Gender, for psychosocial aspects, and local governments, is to take that first phase of those mergers, mainstreaming and the transfer of functions, so that we come up with structural recommendations, which should again go to Cabinet for the final approval before they are implemented. Because that was a general Cabinet decision by then, but this has to be translated into the operational aspects. If, for example, Cabinet says merge these two institutions, what does that mean in terms of a structure, in terms of a process, a business process? That is what we are doing. So There are major milestones around how we are going to do it, having that those structure in place, but also doing the institutional reviews to make sure we come up with those recommended structures to be able to implement. We are looking at harmonizing pay across the service. So we shall undertake job evaluation, and that would be to look at the worth of jobs across the service and be able to touch the pay. So it should be equal pay for equal work. That's what we are trying to do. And then we shall also look at the business process reengineering. You know, especially for those areas where we are mainstreaming, there's a lot of bureaucracy in government. So we also have that as a major area to look at, so that we reduce on those bureaucracies.
I can only imagine, because there's really a lot to also note. Yeah. You're talking about merging, mainstreaming, the streamlining, and of course the transfer, you know, harmonizing, all of them. Yes, and maybe also getting to understand how is the reception so far that you're getting, and making the viewer understand what you mean when you talk about the merging and the transfers that you're going to do. It's kind of technical. Okay. So, yeah, you are right. When you talk about merging institutions, that means you are bringing two institutions together, the functions of two institutions together to form one institution. And one would ask, why should you bring these two institutions together, and what are you trying to achieve? In most cases, you find that these institutions are kind of related. The functions they undertake, or the services they deliver, are actually closely related, meaning there are a bit of duplications here and there. And if you bring them together, that means that you save on the support services, and probably that is how the aspect of rationalizing government expenditure comes into play, that you kind of reduce on that expenditure. So when you merge the two, normally a new institution comes into life, and in most cases it changes the form in terms of a name. Now when you mainstream, that means you are taking functions of institutions and mainstreaming them into the what we call mainstream government, is like government ministries. I will give an example of the National Archives and Records and Archives Center at Ministry of Public Service. This was an institution that was an agency, but due to rationalization, the functions were again mainstreamed into the Ministry of Public Service. Reason being that we already have a department of records and information information science in the ministry. But you also have an agency which is of records and information center. So you find there is a lot of similarity. So mainstreaming means you get these functions of this agency and you take them back into the mainstream public service. Definitely what it means is that the terms and conditions of service now change, because now we are going to the mainstream public service. So the receiving institution, the terms and conditions of service for the receiving institutions now come into play. Then when you talk of transferring functions, you are also, the original institution ceases to exist and the function is transferred. The transfer can be to the mainstream public service, or it can also be to an agency. I'll give an example, for example, of National Planning Authority. Yeah. I think it had to take on other functions, the Population Council. So for others it will be having more activity.
So now it stays as the National Planning Authority, but there has been a migration of some of these functions from somewhere to the national plan. That is now transfer.
Others will be getting more work.
Exactly.
But just Sandra, on that point, I just wanted to support more the point being made by Alan, that now the basis for the rationalization, therefore, in that context, is that when you do the functional review and mapping, you find that there is a relationship of certain functions. And remember, the key aspect of this process is also to reduce or eliminate duplication. So we therefore look at reassessing the entire government structure of the functions, but also then putting that into mapping the business processes, and then you find that it is more cost efficient and effective to put certain services under an entity, or merging them so that they reinforce each other and they become complementary. So then you find that the justification for rationalization is quite very important, and just to note. So I wanted just to put in that point.
I believe there's really a lot to explain to that when it comes to the reasons as to why you decided to take on that responsibility of merging some of the organizations and giving more work to the rest of the other ones that are also duplicated.
Yes, but also equally, if
which
you
other
may,
reasons could those be?
Sorry.
So probably for the reasons, the most immediate is efficiency of government. And when we talk about efficiency, when we put it into economic terms, you are looking at what resources do you put in to be able to produce this much. There is always a tendency to say that the government is very inefficient. So this was one of the reasons and the key that we want to reduce on the resources we put in to be able to produce maybe equal or more outputs. Then, of course, the duplications. You have the same government, same institutions producing, delivering the same services, and the center points are very many doing the same. So you find the government, in most cases, is working in the silos, different institutions, focusing on the same thing, but not working together. So there are synergies that you come on into play when you bring these functions together.
Would you agree with the citizens out there who would make comments such as government expenditure being exaggerated, and now that we're slowly recovering when it comes to our economy, some of the things that would look out for example, government should also work around their expenditure? Could this be one of the other reasons as well?
True. Because actually, when you look at the government expenditure, it is too big, especially public administration expenditure is too big compared to, these other, resources we spend on real service delivery. In some institutions, especially agencies, it may shock you that you would find that more than 70% of the resources that go to an institution are spent on facilitating, on wage and facilitating officers. And maybe only 30% is going into facilitating the real service delivery. And that is a little bit, it's absurd. So these are some of the things that we are looking at, because when you unpack especially the structures, the expenditures, then you do the workload analysis, you do the function analysis, and you tend to attach the right size. You get the right people to be able to deliver on based on the workload, not just having a number of people within an institution. So that is key for us as a government.
Just thinking of how you expect to achieve all this, at the end of the day, you have to stand firm because many will stone you.
Yes, but before they do any radical reaction, it's important for them to be informed that National Plan 1 and 2, these were reviewed. There was the analysis showed that there was need to rationalize because of the reason she has already given, that excess public expenditure vis-a-vis the actual money that is available for service delivery. So when the lessons learned from the implementation of NDP 1 and 2, it was instructive in the development of the NDP 3. And under the NDP 3 now, we took lessons. And that's why we said there had to be majorly reforms, and reforms were not only in terms of the service delivery, but we also even brought in reforms to our planning approach. We introduced the program-based planning approach, but also budgeting and implementation. So one of the things that the viewers need to really take home as a strong message out of this discussion is that the rationalization exercise is also meant to improve planning, because then if institutions use based on the program approach now that we have in place. You heard about programs that we are referring to. We have like 20 programs now, and even this specific rationalization is under the public transformation program, but there are others. Now, those programs enhance institutions' planning to contribute to same results. They will also, it will also enhance budgeting and implementation. And therefore then we, in the end, we achieve efficiency. I just thought I should add that.
Well, good submission. For the viewer who have just joined us, it's good to have your company. That is a topic of discussion for today, to do with the rationalization of government agencies and, of course, the public expenditure. And with me on this particular conversation, I'm having Mrs. Kakama from Ministry of Public Service, and I'm having Mr. Ojok Charles from the National Planning Authority. There's a lot to benefit when it comes to this exercise that is going to be rolled out in the country, but what are those key specific benefits that you're planning to look out?
Thank you so much for that. I would like the viewers to understand that this rationalization is good for the country and is good for both the service providers and also the service recipients. Key to this, we are talking about efficiency and also making sure that the services are there for our citizens. That is very important. If we are talking about reducing that public expenditure, that means that we shall have more funds to be able to provide where we have lacked. That is very key. Now, we also, it helps the service recipients to be able to identify one focal center where you are supposed to go for the service, for example. This duplicating, you go here, you are looking for the same thing, you go here, you are looking for the same thing. It's disturbing on the side of, though it is also, it is expensive on the side of government, but it's also expensive or disturbing on the side of the service recipients. So you kind of come up with clear, you know, centers of service delivery that will help the citizens be able to understand where to go when it comes to such a service. And the moment you have one responsibility center, then there is that accountability. This responsibility center also takes it seriously to make sure to deliver. But you know, when you have many responsibility centers, somebody will say X will do it. Then the other one will say B will do it. At the end of the day, nobody does it. And who suffers? The service, you know, recipient. At the end of the day, there is no service. So that is key for us. Then this duplicating mandates, functions, and you know, all that in terms of government. It is something that has been really not doing good, going well with the service delivery. That it has two fronts, that there is expenditure going, but also the government is working in what? In silos. We are moving in cycles. So bringing those things together is something that is very important. So the recipient, the service recipient benefits, the service provider also benefits, and also government benefits. And this one also is good for government, because the visibility and the accountability and the way the viewers or the citizens view government when the services are there becomes you know, different, rather than saying, that is government. You know, even if it is a health facility, let me go to a private, because you know, that kind of thing. The moment there is that accountability and the service delivery, then government scores on that side.
Charles, would you love to add on,
Yeah,
on the
just
benefits? Because I believe they're quite many.
From NPA's perspective, in addition to what Alan has said as the key benefits, allow me also bring out that for us, one of the key benefits is that planning will become more integrated. Once we have placed agencies where they belong by function, and in accordance with the programs that we want to implement, there will be huge improvement in that regard. The other one is in itself implementation. We've been having big issues to do with scattered implementation, and yet we would like to improve the achievement of the results, the development results. And again, going back to the lessons we learned from the assessment and evaluation of NDP 2, we were careful this time in formulating NDP 3 that we needed this to be fast-tracked, improved, so that the contribution of different programs to achieving results in terms of the outputs that government is expecting through service delivery is enhanced. So that's going to be a huge benefit. Then, of course, the other one, which we must record home, is in all of this, we expect that there will be efficient delivery of government services. What is efficient delivery of government services? It means the citizens will enjoy timely responses in terms of how government is delivering its service to resolve a problem. So we expect that to improve a lot. And then you don't have to, you save time, again on efficiency. You don't have to move from one institution to the other to get related service. So it's like you have at some point what you would like to call as one-stop center. When a citizen has gone to point X, then as much as is practicable and possible, let that citizen get the services that can be accorded or dispensed to him at that point, not to just move all over the place. And that's why even in some countries, you find what they call the government hill, where, for instance, when you go to Zimbabwe, you go to Zambia, you find that those countries have put government together. The ministries are all, close to each other. So if a citizen has traveled from up country, he is able to move just walking distance from one ministry to the other. That's also how we are trying to look at it. That will be as good as the benefit to the citizens. Yeah.
Well, the harmonizing and having a one-stop center.
Yes.
Sounds very good.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm sure you have challenges along the way, quite a number that you have to look out. And earlier on you mentioned issues to do with corruption and also accountability, and seeing others that will be left out in this whole exercise. And maybe on the lighter note, for others, they will still have their employment, but just because they'll be merged and put somewhere else where they can execute much better and do good to do with service delivery. What are some of those challenges that you've encountered so far? Maybe is there a penalty at the end of the day when it comes to accountability along the way if you carry on and you start proceeding with this whole exercise? Should Ugandans expect some penalties to take place?
Thank you for that. Like any other reform, whenever there is change, there is always some bit of discomfort somewhere. So this is not different from those other reforms. It is one of the reforms that, of course, normally change causes that discomfort. One of them is definitely, especially agencies who have been probably getting good pay. Most of them seem to be not comfortable with this kind of reform because some are being mainstreamed, others are being moved, and definitely the terms and conditions of service are definitely going to change. But the way we are going about this is that this is a government decision. The same government that created these institutions has said, look here, some things seem not to be going well. We need to make, to make a change. So somehow the change has to happen, though it might not be, welcome by some. So there is that resistance, a bit of resistance. So what we are doing is we have come up with a change management strategy. We try to talk to our colleagues, our stakeholders at all levels to try to educate them. This is what the government is trying to do. This is what we intend to achieve. And the benefits are for all of us and not, not just, for government, but all of us. Definitely we shall have some bit of course, the fear to lose jobs. A few will lose the jobs. But the strategy, for example, for now, we are in the middle of the first phase. We have already rationalized, out of the 69, we have already rationalized 53, and we've taken a cabinet paper to cabinet. So, and we have about slightly over 1,000 jobs that probably will be affected. But the way we are going about this is that we are very open as government, that if you are willing to transfer with the function, we give you a chance
to take on the challenge.
Yes, but it is not mandatory. Remember, these are agencies where the terms have been and conditions have been different, and probably mainstreaming or going somewhere else. So it is not mandatory. You are given a chance or priority to change, to move with the function, if you are willing. Now, if you are not willing, government definitely, and maybe you will be this is abolition of office. Definitely, that means you will drop off. Now, government has a plan, a compensation plan to pay surveillance packages to some of these people that will fall off. But those that will transfer or will move with the functions, then the compensation plan does not apply because they still work for the same government. Now, we have also been guiding institutions which are affected because we are also trying to protect the government from incurring a very big expenditure, and yet we are trying to bring the expenditure down. We've been guiding them that the implementation roadmap is for 2 years, 2021-22 and 2022-23. So if you are giving, say, contracts, new contracts, then they should be, at least they should be capped up to June, end of June 2023. So come to that time when the roadmap is ending, we should not be having people with contracts who expect us to pay as a government. The contracts will have ended. We are trying to manage it.
I was also thinking of compensation maybe along the way.
We are trying to manage it within in that way. But if you are willing to transfer with the functions, very welcome to continue working with the government. The other challenge definitely is that bureaucracy we talked about in the government, and my colleague talked about the corruption. There is always that corruption when it comes to government institutions, and that is why we are looking at carrying out business process reengineering, those especially on service delivery processes, to make sure that those loopholes where many people want to create those loopholes so that you can actually eat, the Baganda may call it to eating in a kavuyo or something like that. So we are looking at making sure we plug that. Actually, under Ministry of Finance, there is, and under RIP, they are supporting that business process reengineering to make sure that as we restructure or we review the institutions or come up with, they look at the business process reengineering bit of it. And also looking at the ICT worldwide. IT has come on board, and I think it is one of the things we are looking at, to be able to support, strengthen IT systems in the government institutions, to reduce the interface, this service provider, the service recipient interface, because normally that is where the problem comes from. So that we reduce this, and if most of the things are automated as per the structures that are going to come into place and systems, then we are able to also reduce on some of these bureaucracies, and also the the corruption.
So for those who are already having the contracts running, are being paid at the moment, till that particular time when this process is expected to come to an end.
Yes, true.
So
but
how are you going to harmonize the salary bit?
But let me first come to that. There are some of those some institutions who have those contracts which are 5
years ahead.
And probably they had just renewed. And then for us, we are talking about 2 years. And they are very few. We've already calculated that they are very few. For example, the paper we've taken to Cabinet, we had to calculate whose contract ends when, and how much do we pay who, and who is going across or going beyond, and how much are we going to pay. And definitely we could see that the government will make some good savings. But those whose contracts are going beyond the June 2023, they will be paid, will be compensated by government in line with the human resource manuals of, those terms under which they were given the jobs. So for sure, we should expect a harmonization when it comes to salaries for those particular agencies. Yes. Now, the salaries, the harmonization of salaries, at the beginning I talked about trying to standardize or harmonize salary. We have a pay policy by government. It doesn't necessarily say that everybody gets the same, but there is that framework within which salaries must be, run. An equal scale. Exactly. Not one getting 40 million, another one of the same is getting 1 million, the other one is getting 20, that kind of thing. So there is that framework where that framework within which the pay policy defines who gets what. And within that, because the government does not have enough money, you might have seen that of recent there have been pay enhancement for, say, scientists first, and then we go, bit by bit. Because going across the entire service has not been easy. The resources have not been there to make government pay everybody that enhancement. But there is those pay targets that have been approved by Cabinet. That if you're a scientist and you are this, if you're a teacher and you are at this level, this is what you should get. So if we say we give you 20% now, maybe next year we can add another 20%. We are enhancing by another 20%. You are at 40 until we reach 100. That is the plan we have as a government. So the job evaluation, which is intended to be under this reform, is to again look at all the jobs of government. Jobs are also like human beings. They get born, they grow, they also die, or even expand. The content change, and the seasons change. Exactly. So you find that the requirements and the pay of this job, which has changed, it has shrunk or it has increased, it needed to be revised. And you have to be more productive. Exactly. So now when we do job evaluation, it establishes now the worth of this job across, in relation to other jobs across the service. And then determine the salary, a new salary scale. I mean the new salaries for all the jobs across the service. But then now that will be within the pay policy and the pay targets. I think this works well for National Planning Authority. It will be easier for you to put certain things into implementation. When you look back at the NDP 1 and 2, quite a success that you achieved there, and that's still to do with National Development Planning 3. What this means for you?
Yeah, in terms of the challenges, I would like to reflect upon a few. Sandra, the citizens would feel that this is like a policy reversal. Of course, you are aware that in the past there was a time in our development phase where we agreed with our development partners, with our funders, that it was important to create specific agencies to undertake given programs and projects. So we must admit that in the early 90s up to late 90s, that was almost a phase where we created many agencies. And this went through, their creation went through Parliament. you'll find out that a number of these agencies and commissions are results of decisions of Parliament. Now, of course, the challenge here is that, yes, we need then to go back and address the matter on how we implement successfully the rationalization by going back to reverse some of those decisions. So that is going to require taking those decisions where I think up to now there is no agreed position among, while cabinet may be in agreement, there are still pockets in our society where people think this is not necessary. So there is that balancing act that needs to be taken. However, I think for us as planners, we would like to make a case that usually during implementation, in the course of government delivery of its services, it's possible to review and find out that you can even reverse a policy. So it should be, again, viewed positively. Now, the other second challenge that I see is, since this matter came into process, there is a lot of uncertainty among the various employees of different agencies. And because of this uncertainty, people have slowed down work. You do not know how tomorrow will end. So there is now, for now, remember, it came out in 2017, around the end there, and then now 18, 19, 20, then 2022, we are still on it. So it's been a long haul of taking decisions. So while I salute the Ministry of Public Service for carefully managing this process, in terms of decision making and implementation, it also means that it's dragging on, and it may have a negative effect on finally how and when the decision is made. So this needs to be fast-tracked so that the population gets to resolve these issues, and then we know the direction that we are taking. I know there are agencies that have since been retained, proposed to be retained. Then there are those that are to be mainstreamed. Then there are those that are to be merged. Now, some people are having this feeling that maybe there was targeting of specific agencies and so on and so forth. So that issue, the faster we resolve, we fast track this, the better. Then, of course, the compensation. You know that it's a challenge in our context. As a country, we are operating within limited resource envelope. Now, and yet, and I do not know yet if public service has fully worked out the implications in terms of the compensation, because then we need to discuss against the success of the exercise, against the possible cost that government will need to incur. So that would be helpful. But finally, in assessing the cost benefit of organizations or agencies, it must be noted that there are those which will need to exist, not necessarily because they are making profits, but they are necessary for the public good. For instance, some of the regulators, there are these agencies that will be performing regulatory roles. So you will find that if they are collapsed into the mainstream, then you will find that the regulatory functions may again lag behind. So that's a fine line that we need to be very careful about. That in terms of regulation, because in as far as regulatory frameworks are concerned, we as a country need to improve and do much more in terms of improving our regulatory environment for the good of standards, for the good of the delivery of the services, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Well, maybe for those who are having laxity, like you talked about, being in anticipation, when is this coming to an end? What should we expect out of it all? When are the recommendations of the rationalization exercise taking effect? Maybe if they get to understand when it's supposed to take effect, they'll like...
Yes, thank you for that. I will start a little bit behind because there's something which is important that he raised about the time lag. The 2018 study was a call by His Excellency the President to look around the operations of these institutions because of the outcry and the high expenditure that the government was incurring, to be able to look for solutions. That study was in 2018. Now, that study came up with recommendations that were sent to Cabinet for study and approval. And it is only in 2021, February, that Cabinet took a decision. That was last year. I just want to clarify that, that a study which was done from that was a study by then, and then the decision was made in February 2021. So the implementation of this rationalization, actually, the roadmap is across the 2 years, 2021, 22, 22, 23. Those are 2 years. That is the roadmap that was approved by Cabinet on that same day. That those were. So I just wanted to make clarity on that. Now, of course, there is that time lag, but now we are making sure, we are trying to make sure that we live within the time frame, the roadmap. That is why, for example, we are saying in the first year, phase one must look at the mergers, the mainstreaming, and the transfer of functions. Come end of this June, we've completed those ones. And then where you drop these functions in terms of the ministries, because in some cases, Cabinet would take a decision and say, retain, for example, the National Planning Authority, but strengthen, or restructure.
So when will this take effect?
Exactly. Now that is now next financial year. This year was the first phase of the mergers, the mainstreaming, and the transfer functions. And then next year is now handle those ones where they would say, retain, but recapitalize, retain, restructure, retain, strengthen. Now that one is going to happen next financial year. Now he raised something very important about Cabinet, Parliament, and probably the executive not being on the same page. Maybe I just want to clarify that structures, development of structures is a process. It is not one thing you just wake up and say, I've put a structure here. But I also want to say that the Constitution of Uganda, Article 111, gives the powers to His Excellency the President, who is the chair of Cabinet, to create and abolish government offices. So the issue of creation and abolition of government offices lie with the executive. Now, the moment this one is done, and then the technical people, for example, at Ministry of Public Service, we are like in the kitchen trying to come up with, if you want to say abolish or mainstream, this is the structure that would deliver these functions at this destination. Then we take it back to Cabinet. Cabinet will look at this, approve, or approve with amendments, which we shall make. Now, it doesn't mean that that structure is going to be implemented immediately, because that is now the process we are looking at. The structure is in place. Then if the structure is affected by or is affecting any legal framework, then it is the same Cabinet to instruct the Attorney General to come up with bills. So alongside this restructuring, we are working, actually the Attorney General is part and parcel of is a member of the Cabinet subcommittee. So he has a team. As Minister of Public Service is doing the institutional review, we have the team of legal experts that are looking at some of those clauses and articles that are being affected by these changes, these proposals we are making. And they are also coming up with a paper, and it is ready. So that by the time Cabinet says, this is the decision we've taken, then the Attorney General takes over. To come up with bills, there are those principles that first go to Cabinet, they are approved, and then there's that other process. And then that is how the bills and others will be. So I just wanted to clarify that. Now, of course, the issue of anxiety is there. among those institutions that are affected. And that is why we are saying we have come up with a change management strategy that has been approved by that cabinet subcommittee. And as Minister of Public Service, we are providing technical support, but we also allow them to, for example, if they think they can bring on board a consultant to give them that other bit which they think maybe it might not be good. But we always want to be part of it because we don't want them to go outside the government framework.
Time is against us.
Just a quick one about the regulators, the implementers, and I just take it to, you know, the creation of these agencies was in a bid to support ministries to be able to deliver, because the ministries have the regulation, the implementation, the mobilization of money and all that. But in some cases, there was that thinking that if you pour out certain functions, they can be well done outside the mainstream. Now, of course, when we are taking them back, there is also an analysis that is done to see, and then you look at the pros and cons and see. Then you advise cabinet, is this the best way to go? Or should we maybe take this but leave this? You know, those are some of the things that we are doing.
Thank you so much for the clarification. We had a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for spending some time with us and clarifying to the viewer out there what this is all about and when this whole exercise will take effect. My dear viewer, thank you so much for your time. Every time you spend company with us and choose the national broadcaster, you make us proud and we're proud of you. My guests for the day, I had Mrs. Kakama from Ministry of Public Service and also Mr. Charles Sojok from National Planning Authority. Wish you all the best with this particular exercise. I'm sure by next year when it's to take effect, all will be well and no penalties and not being stoned and you know, because now I cannot even fit in your shoes.
For us from NPA, we even think that after this rationalization of agencies, we should now move next to rationalize also the mainstream government to mirror the programs.
At the end of the day, it all works.
That's not for, that's for
another stage, another phase. As long as the Wananchi and the citizens also, you know, achieve from all this that is to do with government services. My name is Sandra Kahunda. Had a wonderful time. Keep it UBC. More better programming coming your way. Have a wonderful day.